we'll move on to the next movie, Malibu Express from 1985. A long story short, or maybe a short story short, we have this private detective who is part womanizer and part lucky son of a bitch, because the women tend to just drape off him without him really doing anything. He's doing this investigation, something to do with finding out who's selling high-tech computer secrets or something like that to the Russians, and to be honest, I forget any other plot elements because all I really remember, or all that is really worth remembering, is the tits, in my opinion. The guy that made this movie, Andy Sidaris, he's got like 12 of these movies. They're sort of all connected in some way, and a lot of them have, returning characters, though I don't believe really any characters from this first movie return in any of the other movies. I don't know if it's a good thing, but that might be a reason why I think this movie is actually quite underwhelming compared to some of the others. Not that the others are like spectacular all-time great movies, but I think the other movies later on get better than this one, because this one is outside of the women. There's not a whole lot to it. I think the characters for the most part pretty dry and boring. The story, who really cares about the story in a movie like this? I mean, there is a little bit of a bit of a thrilling, suspenseful type portion to the story that comes in much later in the movie, where someone, someone kills someone, and we kind of find out who that is. But yeah, the bigger plot in the movie with the selling of computer secrets or whatever it is, I kind of didn't really care at all.
Yeah, so this is a movie I have literally never heard of before. Chucky suggested it. I've never heard of this director before, and so I didn't really exactly know what to expect. So come to find out, it's sort of actiony, more comedy, mostly softcore porn, which is fine. Though I have to say, as nice as some of these women look, it's almost a shame that all we get to see are the topless bodies. I know there were some amusing scenes in him. A few of them, most of them were somewhat goofy, but such as the scene in which they're in the race car trying to escape from the helicopter, and she's trying to,
She's basically trying to fuck during a high-speed chase with weapons, yeah.
And it's just like, they start shooting. It's like, oh, they have guns. Like, what do you think I've been trying to tell you? And so that did crack me up. And, there's a few other scenes that were legitimately amusing. Some interesting, mildly interesting plot points. The main mystery about the computers, that never did much for me. But there are some interesting characters anyway. In fact, the story didn't even go exactly where I thought it was going to go, so I guess kudos to that. But there's also some really goofy things, like that family, for instance, who keeps wanting to race him every time they see him, and the guy's like, "Oh, cool, let's go race now." And yeah, they could have taken those 3 scenes out. That would have been just fine, and they could have thrown in some extra scenes with the I don't know the names, and that probably doesn't matter. The 2 young women who are next to him in the boat, it just popped over every now and again.
The very neighborly.
Speaking of which, we never do find out how they get past his security, if he even has security. So I was sort of thinking there might be spies or in on this somehow, but no, they're just like 2 very neighborly. I mean, if I had neighbors like that, my God.
I had the same thought. Well, one of the amusing things is when we first kind of chose this movie to discuss for this show, I had a look on IMDb at the keywords, or the plot keywords for this movie, and first thing that comes up is big breasts. So any movie that starts with that, I'm probably down to watch it. But this is like one of those movies that's you know, it's pre-internet porn days. Like, this is where you kind of got your adult entertainment from, if you weren't one of those people who wanted to go into the closed off room in a video store where you come out of the room and everyone gives you that dirty look.
Yeah, I do have to say, since I was born in '93, I feel somewhat blessed to not have to deal with all of that, like, old-timey, like, old sex shops and corded off video sections. It just blows my mind that people had to go through that, like buying magazines. Like, oh my god, that sounds like such a hassle.
And then you gotta recall that, I mean, I doubt they sterilized the tapes or video cases or anything being returned from the video rental shops, so who knows what's been touching what and where, and while that movie has been rented out.
Just a late night thought for all you guys out there.
But, you know, this movie, the majority of scenes where there's no tits, it's pretty dull to me. But it does have, from time to time, there's a few amusing quips. Like, there's the ever classic, "You're a private investigator, investigate our privates" type line, and
yeah, I'm going to have to find a way to use that in my real life somehow.
Yeah, and probably the one quote from the movie that I really enjoyed is this one guy. I guess it's like I can't remember what he was. Was he like the chief or some police chief or something? I can't remember, but they're looking at this naked photo, and this older guy is looking at it and is like, "That's what we call hard evidence."
That's quite professional of that officer. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, there's a few others, like where Cody's going on about how his hands are lethal weapons, and this is after his failure to shoot a guy like 5 or 6 times, and the woman next to him is like, "Yeah, just be careful when you play with yourself." You know, there's things like that pop up every now and again in the movie that, you know, kind of make you giggle, but I can't really think that I want to watch this entire movie just to see those few 3 or 4 lines.
Yeah, I'm going to have to say, if you want to be a private detective, you should probably know how to shoot a gun. It's just my opinion.
But I mean, if being a detective means that, you know, almost every woman you come across is down to fuck, well, there'd be a lot more private detectives out there.
It is an impressive list of women. I do think one of the sisters was probably the one in the shower, was probably the most attractive woman there. But to be fair, there were plenty of really attractive women, such as, God, what was her name? I forget her first name, but the race driver, whose last name was Narcos. So some classic, has an H in it too, just two. And she was actually, I think, the first topless scene in the movie. So well done there. And then, of course, I can't forget my neighborly friends.
Yeah.
I do wish we had seen more of them. Though I did enjoy him getting that phone call and he's just trying to get off the line so he can engage in his other activities. So it must be hard to have that much fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed, let's call it, knockers and the neighborly chicks. Yeah, those were the standout ones to me, I think.
Now, out of interest, because I forget if I even asked this, how did you run into these movies?
I'm pretty sure I've seen some of the later movies, like just, or at least scenes from them, just here and there. I had heard some people talk about some of these movies just in, you know, movie groups. Like the next one after this, I think, is Hard Ticket to Hawaii, and it's, you know, it's got its fan base, I guess. In fact, from what I remember, I did watch that movie a while back. It's definitely a lot more entertaining and exciting than this one, and the quality of the production seems quite a bit better as well. So yeah, I saw 1 or 2 of these on, I think, on Tubi in the past couple of years, and these are from my time, back in the like 90s and maybe late 80s. These types of movies, even though, a lot of them are kind of all the same in most ways, it's more of a nostalgic thing for me because, I mean, my teenage years, I grew up, before the internet, so, or just as the internet was kind of coming in with dial-up connections, so you can't really get your porn fix or anything from that. You have to get whatever you can get from your cable TV movies and that type of thing. So these are the type of movies, I grew up with to get that kind of action, so to speak. So, yeah, I mean, they've got a bit of a special place because of that for me.
So you're basically saying they touch your special place?
Wow. They don't, but I'm not saying the special place never gets touched during these movies.
Yes.
I will just point out one other thing, just because you may or may not be aware of it. In the movie, there's this one older couple in a Winnebago, and the male driver, that's Andy Sidaris. He's the guy that makes these movies. So
that's okay. That's not how the image I had of him.
He's pretty old when he started these movies. I think he might have been in his 50s in this movie. So
well, God certainly blessed you.
Yeah, I think he died about 13 years ago. In his 70s, I think he was, something like that. Yeah, but anyways, yeah, he certainly managed to get the whammon for his movies. In fact, I'm not sure if the woman in it was his wife. I can't recall, but I know he's married because I watched some of the behind the scenes stuff, and in the behind the scenes footage that I was watching, well, it wasn't really behind the scenes footage for this movie, it was just for any of his movies, and he'd have Julie Strain kind of like standing next to him, and she would just find every opportunity during this interview to get her tits out, which I appreciated.
That will go on to my list of things to probably forget.
She's in a lot of the later movies, so depending on how big a fan you are of her, there she is. So, Malibu Express, hey? It's got tits, and that's at least worth a few points. But the rest of the movie, it's pretty dull, pretty dry. Let's put it this way, if you remove the tits from the movie, you got a pretty dull, boring, goofy movie that's not, doesn't have a whole lot of humor in it. It tries, but there's no laugh out loud moments except maybe that hard evidence line. That was just a classic. So I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 10. I guess the only reason why I bought this movie is because it goes with all the other movies that I bought. I got all 12, so...
No, did you see this before you bought it?
Yes, I had seen it once, and I kind of thought about the same of it the first time. I thought there was a chance, hey, maybe... Because I think the first time I didn't watch it in HD, and this time I did. I thought maybe, just maybe, that's going to make a difference. Maybe it did in a little way, but not in any way that's going to drastically affect my rating of the movie. So if I ever watch it again, it's only because I choose to watch the entire series again. But even then, I don't know if there's all that much point, because from what I recall and what I hear is that none of the other movies are really connected to this one, outside of maybe one character who says he's like, I don't know, the cousin or something of Cody. I don't know.
Huh. Well, that was actually a surprisingly low rating from you. So I'm actually giving this one a 5. mainly because while I didn't necessarily enjoy a lot of it, like I said, some of the really goofy comedy scenes were a bit much. I still had fun with a lot of it. Some quality nudity, some few funny scenes. And it's, I mean, a 5 is like pretty below average for me, my average being a 7 out of 10. So it's definitely not a great movie or good movie by any means. But, I could theoretically see myself sometime in the future watching it again, if only for. No, to be fair, I would probably skip over the stupid racing scenes. But there's still something there to engage me, shall we say.
Mm.
But I think a 5 out of 10, well, maybe being a bit generous, I think it seems fair.
I was tossing up between a 4 and a 5, and I was tossing.
Some of the Australian slang coming on.
Yeah.
In its defense, it did have a pretty catchy song about falling in love with a girl in the Sandford, so that one actually might make my iTunes.